fairly light agenda this evening. Okay, so let's call the Bristol Select Board meeting to order on Monday, December 19th, 2022. Let's review the agenda. So review agenda for addition, removal, and adjustment of any items. We actually have one this evening, which I spoke with Sharon about this morning. I'd like to add it in as 5.1 on the agenda, and that is to, let me just get my file here, errors and omissions. We discussed this at a prior meeting and it didn't get put on. It was pushed, didn't get put on the next couple of agendas, and it needs to be looked at this evening for approval before the end of the year. So I want to add that.
Was this the updated one? Yeah,
correct.
This was,
so we have,
because we had already
correct.
looked at one, right?
Yes, this is a new one.
New one. Okay.
We began the discussion. Val had one more that she had just received. She was going to put in. I hadn't had an opportunity, so we punted it to a further meeting. It was going to be the next select board meeting, and then it just didn't get put on that agenda. And so we have it on this one. And
yeah, because we have to have it in order for it to be effective on the grand list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I'll do is we'll add it in, we'll discuss, and I can share my screen with the file. It's also on the website too, in the files there if you need to download it. So I'd like to add that in. Continuing to overview of Zoom meeting operation and procedures. Everyone's pretty familiar with this. Please mute your microphones, be recognized by myself if you wish to speak. Item 2, public forum, 5 minutes per person to discuss anything that's not on this evening's agenda.
I just want to let people know that if, for those listening who don't know, Joel Bouvier had a medical event. He was taken emergently to the hospital. He's currently up at UVM in the ICU, doing much better than he was, but still not out of the woods. So we just ask people to keep them in their thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. And then also too, I'm standing in for Valerie tonight, as well as being the chair. Valerie had surgery last week, and she had spoken about this in prior meetings, and that went very well as the doctors and she could have hoped, and now she is in recovery from that. So we wish her all the best and get well soon, and then we'll probably see her in maybe the next meeting or the meeting after that. So looking forward to that. All right, seeing no other public, let's public forum information. Let's do department head roundtable. Let's start with Sharon this evening.
Hi. Let's see, what do I have going on in my world? Finishing up putting in people who came to vote on the November 8th election. We're getting in appropriation requests. We're starting work on the town report, which Ian is going to assist with. And I'll be doing some work and have done some work on the warning for a town meeting. And I've already had some petitions for the appropriations, new ones. They've asked for additional money or they're actually new. So there's a lot of stuff going on right now.
All right, any questions for Sharon this evening? All right, thank you, Sharon. Let's move to Bruce, Police Department.
Good evening. Just one thing, friendly reminder about overnight parking. This past weekend, we had the lights on Main Street so the road crew could remove snow. We had 2 vehicles that we had to wake up the apartment building to find the owners, really close to towing the vehicle. I don't want to tow vehicles. If there's anybody that lives on Main Street that doesn't have a parking permit or need one, but still wants notice, if they provide their cell phone number to us, we do send out a group text before early in the day and then early evening to remind people about the parking. There were a couple other streets where people just needed friendly reminders, but now that winter seems to be settling in, the road crew really appreciates that the vehicles are moved, so it doesn't delay them in their process.
Perfect.
That's all.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Any questions for Bruce this evening?
Bruce, this is all roads in Bristol. When the parking ban is on, it's all roads, not just Main
Correct.
Street. Yeah,
Correct,
okay.
all roads.
Good to know. Thank you. Let's move on to Brett, Fire Department.
Good evening. Can you hear me, Ian?
Mhm.
All right. Yeah, a couple quick updates for the board. The town's new pumper. So Deputy Chief Eric Foran, who led that working group, continues to maintain regular communications with Lakes Region Fire Apparatus on the progress of the new HME pumper. This vehicle, it's on the assembly line. However, progress continues to be slow. Just this morning, we did receive a couple of photos of a very beautiful looking cab and a frame. They're not attached, but again, progress is slow. The anticipated delivery date at this time is March of 23. As a part of that contract, 3 personnel from that working group will take a trip to Michigan on their dime to look at the truck for kind of a final inspection before the vehicle is delivered to New Hampshire to the dealership, where the entire apparatus working group from the fire department will take a trip over there to do an inspection, and at that same time be bringing with them any piece of equipment or tool that requires a mounting bracket, as they will leave those there with the vendor as they will do the installation of all those brackets prior to the new pumper being delivered to Bristol. The Firefighter Recruit Academy, pleased that our 2 recruits are still with it. They're approximately halfway through their Firefighter 1 and 2 training program, which is being hosted by the Rutland Town Fire Department. These 2 individuals, they've been at it since since August the 25th, traveling to Rutland Town twice per week. So every Tuesday and Thursday night, classes from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. In addition to that, they've spent 7 full days down at the Fire Academy in Pittsford for practicals, and hopefully they will be wrapping up sometime in April or May timeframe. And when it's all said and done, each of these recruits will have invested approximately 310 hours each into this training program. So it's quite an undertaking, and it's quite impressive that these folks stick with this as long as they do. So I'm just very thankful they're sticking with it. We've assembled a new working group within the fire department for the purpose of looking into training Conex boxes. Does everybody know what a Conex box is? Those big storage boxes thingies, big metal boxes? Okay. Well, those are, they design and manufacture those specifically for fire service training. So due to a tremendous amount of interest within the organization, something that just came to me, folks want to expand our training program. So I asked for volunteers, and we assembled a 5-person working group for the purpose of performing a feasibility study and explore the viability of acquiring Conex boxes for use in fire department training. A few of the items the group is researching include, potential sites, the site work that would be needed for the boxes, and any ongoing maintenance of these training props. And upon Valerie's return, I will inquire about insurance and whether or not VLCT would have any concerns. So more to come on that. And just to put it out there, this is, as far as the funding for such an initiative, we are currently working with our private 501c3 corporation, the NH Munsell Hose, Hook and Ladder Company, on the funding for this initiative. So I'll just put that right out there. 2023 election of fire department officers. So per Town of Bristol Fire Department policy, nominations for any positions were due at the November staff meeting. This was for the positions of assistant chief, our 2 captains, our 2 lieutenants, and our 2 apparatus maintenance officer positions, which are our truck captain and our truck lieutenant. No new nominations were received at the November meeting. And so following the policy at the December meeting, one ballot was cast for the 7 persons currently filling these positions to continue in their respective roles for calendar year 2023. Saturday, December 10th, the fire department, we held our annual holiday gathering. This is the first time we've been able to have it in 3 years. But it was really great to get together in a social setting with the members of the organization and, family members, just to relax and not have any expectations, just be there, eat and talk. So that was nice. We have our annual meeting of the fire department coming up on Saturday, January 14th. So invitations have been sent out for this annual dinner. So we send invites to our 27 honorary members that we currently have on our list, the 3 chief officers from each of our neighboring towns and the Middlebury Fire Department, to our town clerk, treasurer, our police chief, our Department of Public Works director, our recreation director, and hopefully the 4 of you have found your invitations in your mailboxes if you've been there since yesterday. So, but that's an invite. The fire department, as of today, we've responded to 139 calls for service. And I am continuing my work on the budget for the fire department for 23-24, and I'm working on my submission for the annual town report. So pending questions, that's all I got.
Okay, thank you very much, Brett. Any questions for Brett this evening? Thank you for the invite. All right, thank you. Moving on, let's move to Anthony, Treasurer's Office.
Hey guys, biggest news from the Treasurer's Office is definitely starting to work on the budgets. So I've just been going through pretty much everything that we have to see what we can consolidate and how to better present budget options to the department heads, and trying to figure out a better way to go through that information with the board as well as for meetings. So I've been kind of brainstorming that. So that's taken a large majority of the time since I started this last week. Prior to that and currently right now, I'm just working with Peter Ryan to finalize his last few weeks. He plans on being done after the 1st of January. So I just big shout out to him and all the work that he has done for us and for the town. And that's pretty much a large majority of what we're working on right now.
So
Okay,
one
excellent.
thing I did forget is the water read is complete. So Anthony and I will need to work on getting the bills downloaded and printed and out the door this week.
Oh yeah, it is this week.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Okay, thank you very much, Anthony. Any questions for Anthony this evening? All right, thank you very much. I think that's all for our departments. Taking a look at the list here. Okay, moving on. Now we're into regular business. Item 1, letter of support authorization request, Willowell Foundation for Community Recovery Revitalization Funds. So this is a letter of request that Tasha Ball from Willowell Foundation has asked us to provide. Since our town administrator is out, I bring it before the board to hopefully vote on. And Tasha is joining us this evening and can explain a little bit more about it.
Thanks, Ian. Hi, guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So the Willowell Foundation is applying for the Community Recovery and Revitalization Grant that's coming through the state. And the top priorities for this grant are low-income housing and childcare, which I think are also the top priorities of when the ARPA committee polled the community. I think those were the top two priorities for the community as well. We are also applying for ARPA funding from the town to expand our preschool that we run here in Bristol, the Wren's Nest Forest Preschool. And so we're hoping to have these funds be matching funds, should we get those, the ARPA funds, to do a build project to build our own facility and move the program into a permanent location where it can stay in Bristol and serve Bristol youth indefinitely. And with the CRR grant funding, we would have a certain number of slots allotted for low-income families. I forget the percentage, but it's pretty large. So it'd be serving Bristol youth ages 3 to 6, and I'm just looking for a letter of support from the town for the grant. Any
Thank you.
question?
Questions from the board?
So
Tasha,
this is,
go
go
ahead.
ahead, Darla. Go
I was
ahead.
gonna say that the letter doesn't require us to guarantee any matching funds at this point. It's just us saying that we support the effort, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep. It's just a letter of, it really has nothing to do with the ARPA funds, other than the fact that I'm looking for matching funds for both. I feel like the application is stronger, and it also strengthens my application to the ARPA fund, but it has nothing to do with the ARPA, and it's no commitment on your end about anything other than saying you support me applying for these, as the town, you support this project.
Thanks.
Michelle?
That was a question I had, or the same question I had. So, Tasha, I was reading your request, or I should say your email request. So it looked like this is for purchase of land and then a build, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then it would allow you to go from 15 max to 18 max?
Yeah,
For
for
capacity.
full-time slots, but usually it's not, that's a 5-day-a-week slot, so it could serve more than that. And
Okay.
I'm estimating in summer programming, combined, so that's with the preschool, which runs with the school calendar, but combined with summer programming, that it might serve like 30 to 50 more youth per year, because having our own location, last year we ran 6 weeks of summer camp and they were absolutely waitlisted. And we were limited at that number of weeks because we're tenants where we are currently, but with our own property, we could really expand our summer offerings. So for the licensed preschool, it would be 3 additional full-time spots, which could be, not everybody comes full-time, so that could be, more than that many families. And then in terms of just programming, I'm estimating 30 to 50 more per year. And we've already identified a piece of property and a builder who's willing to break ground in the spring. So I know those two are big question marks in this market right now.
Okay. Any more questions from the board? No? I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we provide Willowwell with a letter of support for their
I'll
project.
second.
Okay. Motion and second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
All those against, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Thanks, Tasha. I will connect with you and get that over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right. Item 2, Bristol Fire Department firefighter leave of absent request. I recommend that this be moved to executive session and that we invite Chief LaRose into the discussion. Is that okay with everyone else?
I don't know, we've never really done it unless there was a
Yeah.
specific reason.
Is there,
Is
Chief,
there-
is there a
specific
reason it's an open session?
If your folks are willing to vote on a leave of absence request effective December 12th, then no.
Okay.
Yeah, we've always done it in open session before. It's not, unless there's
extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, unless there's an
Yeah.
issue.
It
we
was
need to
more or
discuss.
less to provide the board a platform to, if they had any questions for me, as I've, never really been asked any questions about these leaves, but, we look at from time to time doing retroactive leave of absences depending on, individual circumstances, because we're taking into consideration, and/or requirements that must be met, et cetera, and ensuring that person, is not penalized, when they're in fact dealing with a personal matter that, requires their undivided attention. So no, as long as you folks are good with a December 12th effective date, I'm good.
And you're recommending this?
I'm recommending yes, I met with the individual. It was a good discussion, and certainly sympathize with current situation, and want to respect the time the person needs. And for town policy, the minimum requirement is a 3-month leave of absence up to a maximum of 12. So that's just putting that out there. And again, December 12th is the date we're looking for to have that effective.
And they are asking for how long, Brett, at this point?
What's that, Michelle?
How long are they asking for at this point? 3
How
months?
long have they been absent for? Or
No, that they're asking for. Are they asking for a
Oh,
3-month leave or?
they're asking for a 12-month leave.
Okay.
So I mean, I'll just, how this typically goes, the minimum, as you all know, is 3 months and the maximum is 12. So when it comes to Bristol's firefighters, and just based on my years of experience in handling these types of requests, there's been many over time, for various reasons. It's always my recommendation to the person making a request to ask for the entire 12 months. Because that way it saves us all, you all, time, not having to revisit this topic. Because as I find out more times than not, when that 3 months, or maybe it was a 6-month request, it comes due, you reach out to the person, and they're looking to have the additional time. So from an administrative point of view, it's just much easier to ask for 12. But if that person is ready to return in 3 months, they are absolutely welcome to do so.
Sure.
So moved then.
No, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
All those against, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Okay, moving on. Item 3, Middlebury College, PSC 10213, Qualitative Methods, or the ARPA Research Lab class presentation with Professor Jessica Teets. Now, for those who don't know, Jessica is a resident of Bristol. She's been a large part of the ARPA committee, though she's not on it, but she's been doing a lot of amazing work. And she and her class have been working with the committee as well as other towns, sort of exploring the purpose of the ARPA funding, and then how select boards and how towns are working to figure out how best to use those funds. And so this is sort of a wrap up of that classwork, but I'll let Jessica explain it a little bit more detail, and probably better than I could.
No, that was really good. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. And is it okay if I share my screen?
Michelle, are you able to do that?
I have graphics to share with you.
Always nice.
And I do have
I think-
2 students who are here, but they have volunteered me to present. So they're here for questions.
Sounds good. Who do we
I
have
just
tonight?
made you a
Yeah, Stephen.
co-host, so.
Stephen and Jack, is that correct?
Yes.
Does that mean no extra credit from them because they didn't present?
You've got that right. Exactly.
Good question.
But if they answer questions, they can get some extra credit. So thank you all for giving us time to present to you, because I know that these are busy months as you get ready for your budgets. And so what we did in this class was we tried to look at the ARPA funding So we tried to look at how the funding decisions were being made. So looking at different towns in Addison County, how were different towns making these decisions? And specifically, we tried to focus in on the role of public participation or public input. So, you know, how were different towns trying to get public input? For the methods that we use that we'll present to you today, we traced out the process of when the money came in and how different towns were using that money. We also did interviews with select board members in Middlebury, Bristol, Virgins, and Weybridge. Thank you to everyone who participated in the interviews. And then we also did surveys. We did surveys with select board members in all of the towns in Addison County, as well as citizens in Addison County. And so thank you for everyone who took the survey. And so then what I'll present to you tonight are the results of these interviews and surveys. So you all are familiar with the process, but basically what we saw was that most of the towns decided to do the revenue replacement as Bristol did. Actually, Bristol did this first, but the other towns have followed. So all of this money is now in each one of these town budgets. So they still have to decide how to spend it, but it's now in the budget. And so what we did was we interviewed the select board or city council representatives. So these are basically the decision makers, the people who will decide how the money is spent. And what we found is for Middlebury, they have already rolled this money into their regular budget. And so mostly this is being handled by their town manager and the public works department. And they intend to spend this money, you know, just on the regular town budget. So whatever public works needs. They have set aside some funding for Maple Broadband. So they met part of the Maple Broadband request. But otherwise, they simply intend to not do anything special necessarily with this funding, but simply use it for their public works budget. Virgins also is interested mostly in spending on infrastructure projects, but they are a little bit more concerned about maybe doing something different. So they noted that a lot of their infrastructure, especially water and other concerns that they have in Virgins, are really expensive. So the ARPA funding is not going to cover any of these things. It would just be a small percentage. And so they would like to find projects where the ARPA funding can amplify what they're already doing. So not just using it for regular infrastructure projects, but trying to find something where the ARPA funding makes a bigger difference. And they do have some other requests from Maple Broadband, Turning Point, and a couple of other organizations. But so far, they haven't decided that they want to meet any of those requests. Weybridge and Bristol are a little bit different in that they both have decided that they want public outreach. So instead of just moving this money into their budget and deciding how to use it, that they're trying to do some sort of a needs assessment, right? So reaching out to their citizens and trying to figure out what was the harm from COVID, where should this money be spent? Bristol is substantially ahead of Weybridge. So Weybridge is just now trying to think about how to do this. They have already allocated some funding to Maple Broadband. But next, what they would like to do is not allocate any other money until they can collect some more information from their residents. And then you all know the situation in Bristol already. So Bristol is far ahead of these other towns as far as collecting information from the public, trying to figure out what the harm from COVID has been, trying to figure out what the priorities are. So I won't go too much over Bristol since that's you. So then we did surveys. We did surveys with select board members in these 4 towns, but the other towns in Addison County. And we also did surveys with citizens. And basically what we found was we tried to figure out what the priorities were for select board members for ARPA funding. And then we also asked a similar question for regular citizens. What did they think the ARPA funding should be spent on? And so you can see that the select boards, as we saw in the interviews, really want to spend the money on infrastructure. That wasn't the #1 concern, though, for most citizens. They were really focused on affordable housing, childcare, and other social services. So they were looking for this money to be used for specific harms that they felt from COVID versus just part of ongoing budgets, which is interesting because that's a difference that we see between decision makers and citizens. When we asked citizens what the specific harm was that they've had from COVID, you can see that a lot of people lost income. A smaller number of those people also lost jobs, but a lot of people lost income. They also really struggled with childcare. And then you can see a couple of other things like broadband struggles. But a lot of these harms, they were interactive. So for example, when we asked people to sort of fill in an open question about what the harm was, in addition to picking one of these options, a lot of people talked about how even when they lost income or lost their job, they still had to pay to keep a childcare spot, because if they stopped paying, they lost that spot. So what we're seeing is not just that these things are by themselves harmful, but they were also interacting with each other. So this is what we saw. And then when we turned away from the priorities of the ARPA funding and we looked at the role of public input, what we found is that the select board members thought that public input was important, but really that they were just looking to regularly update the public. So as long as the public was informed about what the ARPA discussions were and what the ARPA decisions were, that was the primary role for public input. What we saw when we asked the select board members in Addison County about what type of outreach they've done to the public, you can see that mostly what people have done is add ARPA as like a line item on their agendas. So their regular select board meetings, they'll have a line item on the agenda and they'll talk about ARPA funding. And so that's mostly what they've done. The other thing they've done is they've accepted proposals. So those proposals from Maple Broadband or Turning Point, the other towns have all received those as well. But when we ask citizens about, what do you think the town will do for the distribution of ARPA funds? So, how effective will this distribution be? We see that the public doesn't think that most of the select boards will be all that effective in spending this money. So we sort of see this gap between the select board thinking that they're reaching out to the public and that they're getting feedback, right? Because they're making this a regular part of their agenda, but the public not necessarily feeling that the select board has collected enough information to make good decisions. So again, there's a little bit of a gap there between perceptions of outreach that that most select boards think that they're doing a good amount of outreach, but most citizens don't think that the select board has enough information to make good decisions. And when we think about the public participation and how essential it is, sorry, I haven't been pointing out the difference in the graphs. If I go back, you can see the first one is the select board survey on the left, and then on the right is the citizen survey. Everybody can see that? Okay, good. Sorry, I didn't point that out. And so when we look then again at this division between the select board on the left and citizens on the right, you can see that when we look at the role of public participation, we see that a lot of the select boards think that it's useful sometimes or mostly, but not necessarily that it's the most important thing. So again, we're seeing a little bit of a gap there in between people saying that the select board needs more information to make good decisions, but the select board saying that they think that they have enough information to make a good decision. Now, it could be that both the select board members and citizens are absolutely correct in this, right? But there is this mismatch here between perception. And this sort of leads us to two main recommendations. Again, we see that mismatch in what citizens think the funding should be spent on and what select board members think the funding should be spent on. And then we see a little bit of a mismatch between the select board thinking that they're reaching out to the public and that they're, being very transparent about what's going on with the process, and citizens feeling like the outreach hasn't been enough or extensive enough for the select board really to understand the harm from COVID. And so that just brings us to two recommendations. One is that the role of public input is really important. And so reaching out more to people and making sure that they understand you know, what citizens are, what the harm was from COVID, what they think is important, what they think the priorities are, that information, regardless of what decisions you ultimately make, is really good. And even if it doesn't necessarily change your mind or change the decision-making process, it does increase public trust in the process. So it makes people feel like that the select board does have the relevant information. And when we ask people if they've shared opinions or if they've been approached, you know, for information about how the funding should be spent, we find that a very small minority of people have shared opinions or talked about how the funding should be spent. So there's plenty more opinions out there. Again, this is across all of Addison County, and I want to point out that Bristol has done much more outreach than most. So I'm presenting you with the general situation, but you should know that Bristol is, you know, much further along with public input and outreach than the other towns that we talked to. And then the last recommendation we had was more about active communication. So moving beyond sort of passive communication with putting ARPA as a line item on the agenda, but also to specifically talk about spending decisions. And so maybe this would be part of these, you know, the meetings that you'll have in January and February when you talk more about the budgeting process. But the idea that the ARPA money isn't just sort of put into the budget and disappears, but that it's really doing something. So I think people are looking for some kind of investment or some sort of relief from the harms of COVID. And so just pointing out where that's happening in the decision-making process, we think would be really good. And then also because the towns are trying to learn from each other, basically what we found in talking to the other towns and the Vermont League of Cities and Towns is that no one understands how to use this money really. And everyone's sort of struggling through the process, through the prioritization. And what's been really interesting is how much the towns are looking to each other and trying to learn from what they've done. So since we've done this process and we've talked about what Bristol's done, both for Jens and Weybridge have talked about trying to do more outreach and bring in more public participation. So I think it's been a really valuable process. So I'll go ahead and wrap up here. I know we only had 10 minutes and I want to make sure that we can answer questions. So let me stop sharing. So we're happy to answer any questions that people have about what we uncovered or anything we learned in the process that I didn't go over.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. Questions from the board?
I have a question, Jessica. You talked a lot about public outreach. Was there any suggestion on best ways to connect with the public?
Yeah, so again, this was across all of the towns in Addison County. So again, Bristol has done a lot more than others. So in Bristol, the ARPA committee has done focus groups, you know, with people in education, with the business community. They also have done sort of general surveys. We also have done things like going places, like going to the dump on Saturdays. And, you know, as each car pulls up, we ask them, you know, how do you want this money spent? Or going to the library and doing this. So I think that a lot of other towns are actually learning more from what Bristol has already done. The one concern that we had about our outreach is that, you know, we're not necessarily reaching people who aren't looking to participate. So we're sort of reaching the people who are easiest to reach and not necessarily the hardest to reach, who are also probably the most vulnerable and maybe the people who've had more harm from COVID, like when we look at that lost income and lost jobs. And so I think that that would be a really important group to try to think about how to reach out to them. And, you know, this is what the select board has done in the past. So you all would probably have really good ideas to share with the ARPA committee about how to reach out to those people.
I think it's probably important to mention that I don't believe this board has any intentions of using this money to offset our budget, because that'll just make next year a catch-up year. So I believe anything we do with it won't be related to the budget. That doesn't mean that it won't be infrastructure or something along that nature, but it won't be a line item on the budget that we use this money for.
I think that that would be really great to see. I think that's what it seems like people are looking for, that they're looking for some kind of an investment. And so again, you know, I think that the actions, at least on the part of the Bristol Select Board, are there. It would be more a question of, you know, how do we best communicate that so people are aware of what's going on?
Okay. Well, thank you very much to you and your class. Terrific work.
Do we get to hear from either of them? Are they even going to say hi?
Stephen, do you want to say hello? Oh, there we go. And Jack too.
There they are. Make sure you unmute yourselves.
I can say hi. Yeah, I just really appreciate the chance to present to all you, and I think our professor did a really good job of summing up that most of the citizen responses that we got mentioned that people who had heard about the American Rescue Plan had been attending like town and city meetings. So I think it just goes to show that those are very effective communication avenues, but those are generally for the people that are like seeking out that kind of involvement. So, but yeah, thanks for letting us present tonight and taking time out of the meeting.
Sure. Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, guys.
It is hard to get people involved who don't want to be involved. It's easier to sit back and complain about what's going on than it is to get involved and actually do something about it. You know?
Yeah, and we try very hard to be as communicative as possible and get our meetings out there and involve and create committees when we feel committees should be able to be created and to be able to reach out to the public. So it's very, very positive to hear how well we're doing compared to other towns, or at least in terms of what the direction that we decided to go in and how that's working. So that's really good news.
Yeah, Bristol had the highest response rate of the towns for a multitude of reasons, but it's a good reflection.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. All right. Thank you, Jessica. Thanks, Jack. Thanks,
Thank
Stephen.
you.
Good night.
All right. Moving on. Item 4, Water Department authorization request to repair the high lift pump number 2 motor. And we have Jill and Cy on this evening just to discuss a little bit about this project.
I don't know if the pictures made it to the select board, but I'm pretty sure the quote probably made it to you guys. Did you share the pictures too?
Yes,
they were
they were
on.
part of the packet. So
Okay,
board
perfect.
members, and I can share. Let me do that now, just so people, excuse me, can see.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's important to communicate is the pumps that we have at the pump house are pretty specialized, meaning that the motors and the pump bodies are not something that are just on the shelf anywhere. Each time they're specially made for our facilities very specifically. So what we did is we brought this one to Pioneer, which they do the motor rebuilds. I said, as far as the case, it's in great shape, but clearly Cyrus can speak more to the parts, but the windings and kind of the interior of the case after over 40,000 hours are in much need of being rebuilt.
Black spot, touchdown on.
Yeah.
All
Okay,
right there.
he's got the picture. Ian, can you go down a little bit?
Sure.
Keep going. I think he had seen it in that other.
That's the other black spot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Those two black spots hit and created a bad spot. They said you could have been shocked because it was grounded out, sitting there on its
Oh,
case.
nice, because it was touching that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Huh.
Due to the bearing wear, I guess, is what caused it.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually, the fact that we had an ungrounded facility previously kept this motor from showing us the problem, but it also could have electrocuted us. So I'm kind of glad it happened that way, to be honest.
Yeah.
That it just shorted out and, you know, said, hey, replace me, which luckily we had the rebuilt motor from the other side to utilize. So this would just give us a spare motor. We do still have the full motor and pump on order through Vermont Pump. It's just still delayed.
And so this, in terms of the rebuild, everything is rebuilt here in terms of all the wire and all the whatever this is called.
No, that's what they're proposing for that. It's like almost $5,000. It's maybe short $2 of 5,000,
Yeah.
like 4,990 something.
Okay.
They said they would rebuild the windings. They were gonna
Okay.
epoxy the inside of the case to keep it from rusting. Basically recondition it to new condition again.
Okay.
They do the interior and the exterior and kind of rebuild this whole electrical portion on the interior as well.
Okay. Questions from the board?
Jill, so was this in the budget? I mean, was this something we were planning on anyway?
We always plan on making sure that we are replacing and having spare pumps on the regular, so we actually carry it in the capital plan.
Okay.
And you can choose to either use the regular budget or the capital plan for it, being that there's space in either. As far as the new pump, we did carry that in the capital plan, and what we had in the budget for in town meeting. We had certainly carried a new pump there, but as far as rebuilding, we hadn't specifically carried that literature. It's more of a
So
ongoing maintenance.
basically what I did was I brought it there to make sure, to figure out what it was, if it was garbage to be thrown out, what it would cost to be repaired, because they told us that it was garbage when we pulled it out. So we figured we'd bring it to them and see what the repair was, see if it was worth it, because it was $12,000 for the pair, the motor and the wet end from Vermont Pump, which we're awaiting delivery. It's supposed to be day before Christmas. We'll see. But it's basically what you guys want to do with the motor. If you want to junk it or you want to keep it around. They did say it is a custom built piece, so really it's up to you whether you want to sink the money into it or not.
It's custom built and we need the custom built for our application.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Then I think it's probably a good idea if we have a spare.
Yeah.
Sounds
Yeah,
good to
we
me.
think so too, but it's your facility, so we like to make sure that you guys agree with the thought process and trying to preserve things that are custom that are still savable, salvageable.
So Jill, the one that's on order, so then will we have two backups?
Sort
Or,
of.
two
This
sort of scenarios?
is
Okay.
just the motor. It does not include the wet end, which is the pump.
Okay.
It's the electrical side.
Okay.
It's the big motor. The pump is probably, I don't know, maybe the size of that. When you travel and you put that thing around your neck, picture two of those together. That's the size of the pump. The motor is huge. It is
75 horsepower.
75 horsepower. It's the size of like a really fat dog. Like it's the fattest lab you've ever seen.
Nice.
Just to compare it to things you might know in your lifetime.
Is that a lab or a
Like
Great
the
Pyrenees?
fattest lab you've ever seen. Short,
That's
fat
funny.
lab. What else?
Or a very unhealthy chihuahua.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yes, or a very like if you did like a 18-inch section of a maple tree that was 150 years old, it's that big. It's big. Or a very fat lab.
All right.
I don't know. We see all these things all the time, but you guys don't necessarily end up in the pump house or at water facilities all the time seeing the size of pumps and relating them to something in your world.
Right. Understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Baker. I think, since we do have custom equipment in there, it sort of benefits us to have a spare custom piece that if we needed to use, it's there for us to use.
Yeah, I think it's cheap insurance.
Yes.
Yeah. And nothing's getting cheaper these days, and it's harder and harder to get things to even appear, even when you order them. So.
Right. And the fact that we can rebuild this as opposed to getting a brand new one or having to get all new is great too.
Yeah, and they said 3 to 4 weeks, so that's not too bad. That gets it back to us towards the end of January.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second for the, I guess, approval to have the pump repaired.
Who made the
Uh,
first motion? I
motor-
heard Peter say second, so who
No,
did the
you-
first?
Peter was
Peter
first,
made the
Michelle was
motion
second.
and I second, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
For motor rebuild, sorry, not the pump, you're correct. For price was $4,989 from Pioneer Motors and Drives Incorporated in South Burlington. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All those against, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Cy, for jumping on and detailing that for us.
You're
No
welcome.
problem.
And we'll get that in the works.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Good. Have a good night.
You too.
Aye.
Okay, moving on. Item 5, request for parking variance, Watershed Center Winter Solstice event. And the board has details on that was on the website. And then we're also joined by David Brin this evening, who can explain his request, and we'll probably have feedback from Police Chief Nason as well in this discussion. So David, detail what your variance request is for us, please.
Great. Well, thanks a lot. And thanks for having me and making time for this discussion. I just want to get a little bit about what the Watershed Center is all about. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We started in 1996. We acquired the Virgin City Watershed property, 664 acres, which we've expanded to 1,001 acres, all of which is conserved. So it's getting to be a fairly significant hunk of land. And it's a popular place. With COVID, we've had uptick in recreational use of the facility, kind of doubled at least, maybe tripled. And we have a relatively small parking lot, kind of by design, because we don't have a lot of infrastructure and we don't have a lot of opportunity for maintenance. So we keep it kind of cozy, but it's getting a lot of use. And one of the things that we used to do early on, or one of the things that we do, we're actually the Bristol Best Night is a project of the Watershed Center. Not everybody knows that, but that's one of the things that we do and we sponsor. So we're kicking around ideas about how we're going to deal with our access. We're contending with very aggressive beavers, and being a conservation organization, we're kind of pleased to have them on board. But we still are able to do a lot of watershed projects and training and game of logging and sustainable forestry and a variety of things. But the thing that we did for many years was a solstice celebration. And the way we would do it is we call the state police, we call the town, and then the state police would say, yeah, and sometimes they'd come over and check it out. And same with the town, it was fine. And now, and I understand it, and we completely understand why, it's not quite as easy. And for us to actually have a little winter solstice celebration, at one time we'd have 100, 150 people attending. So, but now we're just toying with the idea, keeping it kind of low key and in-house. What it is, can we get access to parking on the town, on the high road? I know it's a class 3 town road, and it's, the 3 rod, and the travel surface is in our neck of the woods where we typically used to park anyway, is about 30 feet. And it's a little cozy, a little tight. And so we're just wondering if it's possible to have, I don't know what you call it, a variance or your blessing for a one-night thing once a year, or just this year, runs from 4 p.m. in the afternoon till 10, and there would be parking on the road shoulder. Again, we're way big on complying fully with zoning regulations and water quality regulations and buffers of wetlands. I mean, this is like what we're up to. And so we want to fit in well, and this doesn't have to be a force fit. It's just that we wanted to know if this was something that we could ask for and receive, and if not, we'll go back and think about something else. So
Okay. Thank you, David.
Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, isn't this kind of out of our hands? This is not like a town policy or your policy. This is like state statute regulations that say you can't park.
Yes, state statutes says you cannot park in the travel portion of a roadway. And unfortunately, due to the width of those roads, you're in the travel portion, and we do not drive that area every day. But if somebody calls to complain, then we respond and take care of things accordingly. I don't think the town can give the authority to say you can park on the road, because then you become liable if something happens. They wanted to set up to you with a request if they had flaggers where they had signage indicating that there would be a delay or there's one lane of travel, and they were assisting people by using flaggers, then you might be covered that way. But otherwise, no, it's the way the statute's written.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
Okay. So it sounds like we don't really have the power to grant that. I don't know, given the flaggers idea, David, is that something that you're able to take back to the watershed group for that particular event?
Absolutely. And that's exactly, yeah, that would be a great bit of information. And I'll definitely bring it back. The question, one further question is, Bruce, does that relates to the travel portion of the road? It doesn't relate necessarily to the buffer that's left in the right of way. Or are we saying that there would be no parking at any time at any part of the 49.5 foot right of way?
Technically, their tires have to be off the road, right, Bruce? Just like they do up at Bartlett Falls.
Right. I don't think the road is wide enough, and there is nothing designating or indicating that there's a shoulder there. And there are some large pieces of farm equipment. And of course, this time of the year with the plows, there's equipment that's even larger than a vehicle. So there's no area there that I know of that's wide enough that would accommodate that.
And the farmer today reditched the south side of the road, so the ditch is very prominent now. I have a thought, and it's just a thought. I'll run it by the rest of the board, but we do, if this is something that we thought we wanted to accommodate, and it's just one afternoon, evening, signs would have to be set up, but we do have the traffic lights and could make it alternating traffic with the traffic lights, if that's something that the board was amenable to doing. I don't know what I don't know what the liability is. I'd have to pass on that.
Yeah.
But I know when we set up to do work in the road, we can set our lights up and make it one lane. That's maintenance. I don't know where this falls in that.
Yeah, if something happens, who's on the hook for that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it would be like when we let somebody on the park, if they could give us their insurance and make us insured for it. It's a thought.
David, is there ability to park somewhere else and bus people in?
That's what I was thinking too, Michelle. Some sort of shuttle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good option for sure. Yeah.
I mean, it just seems to me safer. I mean, if people are just going to park on the side of the road, they take their chances of, getting towed, getting ticketed, or if they cause an accident, then they're responsible.
Right. Yeah, well, I guess and that's why we're here talking to you. We want to be responsible, but by being responsible, we don't want to create a hazard. We want it to be safe and a good setup. And we may have had our time when we had our little heyday out there, and we may have passed that. So that's okay too. So, but what you've mentioned here is really good food for thought, and we'll keep ourselves, when we park, we'll stay out of the right of way, and we'll stay off the surface as best we can, as best we can patrol that, and stay out of this kind of issue, and we'll see where we go from there.
Good luck.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you, David.
Thank you so much.
Good luck,
My
David.
pleasure.
Bye.
Okay. Moving on. Item 6, authorize accounts payable warrant and any liquor licenses. Sharon?
You missed one. You missed your 5.1 errors and omissions.
Oh, yes, I did. Thank you very much. I didn't add that to my list. 5.1, errors and omissions document. Let me share.
Oh, we
my
got one
screen.
error.
Yeah, very good. Oh, thank you for catching that. Sharon would not have been pleased. All right,
Sharon-
let me open. Sharon would have caught that, hopefully. Let me share my screen. And here we go. So this includes the 5. So we've got Nelson, Lathrop. Jumping down, we've got Lathrop again, Brown, and then Meahill.
Mealy, is it Mealy?
Mealy.
Yeah. Brown Hill is also Lathrop property,
Right.
Oh, that's together. Okay. All right.
but he
so
named
let's
it
see.
something else.
Okay. All right. Any questions from the board? I don't know if we had I don't think we had questions last time. We had discussion about it, but because Melee,
I was waiting for one, wasn't she?
right, which was this one, I think. I don't think this
Yeah,
was in the
last
previous
one.
one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So let's go through. If people have questions on the first 2, let me know.
Increase, decrease.
Which one?
I'm just
Yeah.
thinking out loud.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm good with those.
Beaker and I are good with those, Ian.
Okay, moving on.
We got Darla too.
I'm good. I'm good with those 2. I'm looking at the next one.
No, the next one is just really taking out the business property. That's all they did.
They split them,
Yeah.
so it's the same total.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any questions on that next one.
We're good.
Yep.
We're good. Where is Madison Drive?
Sad when we all have to ask that.
Up
Yeah.
past, you know where the new Forest Ridge is?
Up off of Notch?
Yeah,
For
it's,
Okay.
you know,
Oh,
Fred
it's part of-
Johnson's on one side, the new Forest Ridge is
Yeah,
on the other
the
side,
new-
and then Madison Drive is further up.
okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, I'm fine with that one too.
An adjusted
Alrighty.
survey. Yeah. Looks good.
Okay. Terrific. I'll stop sharing. All right. I
Motion to
entertain-
approve the errors and omissions.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Got motion in 2 seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All those against, nay.
I'll read this.
Motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Okay. All right, now moving on. Item number 6, authorize accounts payable warrant and any liquor licenses.
The warrant is for 91,999 and a penny. We don't have another meeting for 3 weeks, so I added about 40,000 worth of invoices today from the Friday list. So, and none of them were out of the ordinary. They're ones we were expecting. I also approved a 3rd class license last week. We have 2 of our businesses that only do them for 6 months at a time. This one happened to be for the mini factory, which is at 16 Main. So I approved it last week because it ran out last week so that liquor control could issue them a new one for the next 6 months.
Yeah, it must be Bobcat.
It's gonna be on the right.
Yeah.
All right, excellent, thank you.
Sounds good.
And, excuse me. Item 7, select board roundtable. Let's start with Darla this evening.
I do not have anything except to congratulate the Lumen Festival, which I heard was wonderful. I didn't make it out. But also the rec department has put on some great things. And so just wanted to extend my appreciation for all that work.
Yeah, they had a good turnout for the rides with Pat this weekend too.
Yes. With Santa too.
Yes.
Michelle,
I think I'm good.
Beaker,
All's good here.
and I'll echo Darla's sentiments that Lumen was very well attended, very popular, which is great. Our performance was great. And also, yeah, the rec department, we did the rides and we did the gingerbread house making as well, which was very well attended. And that was really fun. That was great. All right. We don't have anything else this evening. We don't have executive session. We don't have a town administrator's report. I was unable to match Valerie's quality and only managed to put together the agenda. And we'll see how I do next time. And so unless anyone else has anything else to add, I think it's time to end the meeting. We
Happy
don't have any,
holidays.
let's see, correspondence reports. Let's see, we have in the packet, there was Regional Planning Commission newsletter and governance press release for the Better Connections grant. And I think that was all. We need to take a look. So our next meeting will be next year, Monday, January 9th, 2023. And then our following meeting will be January 23rd, 2023.
Yeah, but we're meeting every Monday for budget stuff, right?
We haven't in the past. We hadn't done that in January. I think we did it in February, but we can discuss that at the next meeting. No, we did it.
We do
It has
them all
to
in
be in
January.
January.
Because we have to have the budget done by the 21st.
Oh,
or
right, I
something
guess.
like
Yeah,
that.
by the
Yeah,
end
I
of
guess 'cause we did-
January, so we can.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that that
Brett's
time
got
table-
a
Brett's
question.
back on.
You
Oh, he
just
is?
answered my question. I'm sure you don't have a schedule yet of what evenings you are going to ask which department heads to be there for budget presentations and discussion, but are you able to speak to the capital plans, or will we discuss those at the same time we're going over our budgets, proposed budgets?
I think we can if we're able to. Yes.
I volunteer to be first, Brett? In the first meeting?
I should be ready. I don't know why. I guess I'm just not remembering. I don't know why we thought we did this in like December each year, but apparently I'm a month ahead.
Last year we were earlier. We were
Yes,
done with-
we'd already had a
last
couple meetings and it
Right.
had budget discussions. We were a little bit behind this year, obviously, with events that have happened.
Yeah, I just more was concerned about myself. Want to make sure I wasn't behind or missing something.
No,
No,
you are
you
not.
All right.
No, but we won't push them till February. They'll
Right,
be
no.
done in
Okay.
January.
January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Holidays, everybody.
Motion
Yeah.
adjourned.
Happy holidays. Yep.
Okay. Motion second. All those in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
There you go. All right. Good night, everyone. Good night, Jim.
Bye, everyone.
Night.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks. Bye.
Goodbye.
End.